Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? It is Cashing Points live, breaking down wild card week football. I guess primarily from the 6 game slate, or I guess we'll give some analysis on the Saturday slate versus the Sunday slate, etc. Yeah, and we've got the great John Proctor, DFS legend. We got Jake Tribby, who wrote this week's slate breakdown. Way to go, Jake. He crushed it. Was editing that earlier today. Guys, how are we doing today?
Scott, what was the line on you calling it not wild card weekend? Like, what was the line for you to screw that up? Wild card week?
Plus 100.
Sky. Graham let you host one time.
Hey, I don't want to be the host. Graham's power went out due to ridiculous wins in Denver. Jake, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. Excited to talk some playoff football. It's about time I got the chance to roster Joe Flacco on a playoff slate.
Hell yeah, brother. And one thing we know about Joe Flacco is he goes Super Saiyan in the playoffs. Isn't that right, Ravens homer John Proctor?
He has. Although it was only one time.
And it was 20 years ago.
And it was literally the last year I was living in Baltimore. It was so awesome. We were like riding. People were like climbing buildings and stuff. What a great time.
Shout out Baltimore. RIP Pop Tacos. Yeah. Let's dive in, guys. First game on the slate. Cleveland, Houston. Cleveland is favored by 2 points. Nice little 44.5 point over under, third highest of the slate. Let's start on Houston side. Jake Tribby, how good of a play is CJ Stroud? Is Nico Collins a must play? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the most surprising thing to me looking around the industry this week was seeing CJ Stroud's projected ownership. On the 6-game slate, I'm seeing 2, 3, 4%. To me, that's pretty ridiculous. I get that the on-paper matchup, especially if you look at season-long metrics, certainly isn't great. But the Browns have been forcing opponents into a more pass-heavy approach since Joe Flacco took over. And really, like, the most important thing to me here is that CJ Stroud has absolutely cooked single high coverage shells, which the Browns run at a league-leading rate. He's top 5 or top 6 in every efficiency metric against single high coverage. To me, this is a really strong matchup for CJ Stroud. And I mean, obviously, this game doesn't have the shootout potential that Green Bay Dallas does. But I mean, man, I could really see some points being put up here. And, if Stroud's going to be low owned on the 6-game slate, I want to be all over it.
Yeah, I think everyone's just kind of playing Flacco. And I mean, as I feel like I've been Flacco's biggest proponent. I think for the most part we have in general as a group. But it's like just like rolling into Flacco as the highest owned quarterback if you play the 6-game slate, I think he'll be the highest owned quarterback on the weekend, and you're playing him first and at the highest ownership, where Stroud will probably come in, I don't know, a third of his ownership or maybe even less. It just makes me want to play Stroud so much more than Flacco.
Yeah. Jake, where do you think Stroud comes in overall in terms of ownership? Third, fourth?
I don't even know if it'll be that high.
Yeah.
I mean,
wow.
Yeah, I think Baker could be higher owned on the 6-game slate, which is pretty silly given that, his health is such a question mark. I guess, the trickiest thing with Stroud could be, some of these receivers are questionable, but it's the first game, so you'll have plenty of time to adjust. I made a great argument for Stroud, and I left a comment in the slate breakdown just saying, am I missing anything? Like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills thinking he's this awesome play, but there really aren't many knocks on him.
Part of the argument for Flacco is like how ridiculously easy he is to stack. You just play David Njoku and you play Amari Cooper, but that works with CJ Stroud as well. You just Nico plus those two, and hope Nico drops 200, and then I don't know, some more production spread out. Maybe Dalton Schultz gets there. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that's a great call. We know that opposing quarterbacks are positively correlated, so the leverage you'll gain on CJ Stroud is pretty big. But I asked you earlier, Nico Collins, do you think he's a must play? Noah Brown is like a wounded gazelle out there, just dragging a limp leg, like he's just done. Nico Collins, like you said, great coverage shell matchup, smashing without, Texans wide receivers have been a cheat code all year. Now the rest of them are hurt, and he just went nuclear. Price looks ridiculously low at 7K.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really strong tournament play again because, largely due, to Flacco pushing the pace and the coverage shell matchup. I wouldn't call him a must play though. There are some better options at wide receiver. I mean, Amari Cooper on the other side, I'd prefer overall for, cash game build CeeDee Lamb. So you're not getting to Nico Collins in cash, at least on DK. But he's a really strong tournament play. Obviously paired with Stroud or as a one-off.
I mean, I'd rather Nico than Amari by a wide margin. There's only 200 more. What do you think, Johnny?
I think Amari projects better. Probably, I don't know. I think I have him 1.5.
He's a pretty shitty coverage shell matchup. I mean, like I don't know how much that, and it's a road game. I don't know how much that matters when like Flacco's just like force feeding him the ball, but it's a much better spot for Njoku, and it's like a pretty not good spot for Amari, just on the coverage shell matchup. But the on paper matchup obviously is favorable.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like Houston pass defense has completely fallen off the rails. You're in a dome. I mean, it's in terms of like on the road, it's a pretty good spot to be on the road. I think one thing I really like though is playing Cooper and Collins or Njoku and Collins, just like two of those guys from this game. I think playing Flacco and like three of these guys is just gonna be massively popular. And I love pieces from this game. Like I like Nico, I like Cooper, I like Njoku. I think Elijah Moore is in play, and I think that will be way less popular.
I'm surprised to hear you say Elijah's in play. But I guess it makes sense with Cedric.
Well, there's a point where you just like have to play some of these guys. So it's like you have DeMarcus Robinson, you have Elijah Moore, you have Jameson Williams. He's in play in terms of that range of guys. But I think Elijah is he's big leverage off of who Cooper. I think probably is going to be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate. If DeMarcus Robinson, if you're playing the 6 game, but Cooper will definitely be the highest owned on the Saturday only. So I think that's where Elijah comes in. But I think playing just like 2 pieces of this game or 3 pieces of this game and avoiding the quarterbacks gets you really different in terms of ownership. Flacco's just going to be Flacco's a great play. He's just like ridiculously owned.
I think Njoku's a must play. Maybe the best play from this game. Just because tight end is so gross. I will say, like, on these short slates, every single time, it's always the objectively worst tight end play who scores 2 touchdowns. Happens every single time. But just
so it'll be Travis Kelce.
5,600 for when he was getting wide receiver 1 volume and producing like a wide receiver 1. I think he's a must play personally.
So is that why your lean would be so like if you were just picking one Brown, it would be Njoku? Yeah,
and the coverage shell matchup favors him and doesn't really benefit Amari. But yeah, Amari's an awesome play. And like I said, I really like Stroud plus Nico plus that double. Running backs, I don't think there's much there for Jerome Ford. But Jake, I know you really like Devin Singletary, so let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, Devin Singletary had every single backfield touch for Houston last week, 88% of snaps, 77% route share. To put that into perspective, there's only been one instance of a running back all season earning a carry share over 90%. That was Kyron Williams in week 5. So Devin Singletary earning every single backfield touch is legitimately rare, legitimately awesome usage. That makes him a must play for cash, but if you want to get away from him in tournaments, I mean, ownership's going to be he'll be among the highest owned running backs, top 3 for sure, maybe number 1 on the 6 game slate. If you want to get away from him, Scott, as you noted, he scored over 13.5 DraftKings points, once in the last 7 games. That's certainly concerning from an ownership perspective if he's going to be popular.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I think like obscene value, just amazing usage. But yeah, that's a counter argument for tournaments if you're looking for one. It's just the production really hasn't been there, or not as much as we'd like. Johnny, what do you think?
I think one thing you have to remember is like last week was essentially a playoff game for Houston. So that's, I think, what we'll see again. So in terms of snap share, I think it'll be Singletary, all in again. So in terms of usage, you just kind of have to roll into that. It sucks though to burn. It sucks to burn like 3 spots in the first game of this slate. If you play, you play Cooper or you play like Nico and Singletary and Njoku. That's the toughest thing for me in terms of Singletary. I think in tournaments, maybe not playing him and seeing where it goes is probably really sharp because I think he's going to be 50% owned probably in GPPs. He'll be the highest owned running back in cash games for sure. And then just sort of getting different from there because he definitely has not been like great with his usage. So that's kind of, I think, one thing. And, Jerome Ford paired with Cleveland defense, I think is really interesting. And I do think we'll see a blend. I don't think this is one of those spots where like Ford's going to get ramped up because it's a playoff game. I think they'll play both of them, which is just what's really annoying. It's probably where I fall.
I'm okay with Ford as a run back on Stroud teams on the 2-game slate, just with the hope that Houston gets out to an early lead and they kind of game script hunt out of the game, but he could still steal a good portion of the inside the 10 touches, which is tough.
Yeah.
And
Ford, I think Ford's pass volume with Flacco has been better than earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Any other notes from this game before we move on?
Here, you go ahead, Johnny.
I was just going to say, I think Schultz is a good play.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing.
Especially, he had a brutal, he just played bad in their last game. And I think he was like fingertips away from a 60-yard touchdown. He was fingertips away from another long pass. So, they sort that out. If they had sorted that out, he would be probably more popular than Ferguson. But I think Ferguson will be more popular, and I probably prefer Schultz.
Same. And I think Jake agrees.
Yeah. Noah Brown, I suppose, is in play. If he suits up, he's, his splits when one of Tank Dell or Nico Collins has been out is pretty solid. You could argue he's, not 100%, which is almost certainly true. But I think at 5,100, the 5K range for wide receiver on DK is pretty tough. So I think if you're making a bunch of Stroud teams, Noah Brown is a guy I'd be considering.
I guess last thing quick, Hutchinson or Mechie?
For me, it's Hutchinson. He had 24% of the team's air yards last week. I believe he had 4 targets to Mechie's 2. Mechie did have a higher route share. But you're probably only getting to either of those guys on the 2-game slate, right?
Yeah. Or if you 40, Stroud teams or something, I think that they cycle in. Yeah.
All right. Next game, Miami, Kansas City game is at Kansas City. Is supposed to be one of the coldest NFL games of all time. Winds 20 miles per hour. I think that's sustained and not gusts, which is crazy. Kansas City is favored by 4.5 points. The over under is pretty low. It's the third lowest on the slate, 44. And so I think everyone wants to mostly avoid this game because Miami, multiple injuries, kind of offense, a shell of its former self. Kansas City, Mahomes has not been a thing for quite some time. Kelsey has not been a thing for quite some time. And so you're really left with what looks to be Rashee Rice as like a really strong player. You know what you're getting. Going to be really good volume. Isaiah Pacheco, arguably one of the best values of the slate. And Devon Achane, I think good upside. Jake, any one of those players you want to pick out and focus in on as your favorite?
Yeah, Pacheco's right there with Singletary Aaron Jones, Kyron Williams as top running back play of the slate. On paper matchup isn't great, but Chiefs are favored. Weather's going to suck. And most importantly, I mean, Pacheco has just absolutely dominated usage, high end RB1 and every usage metric since Jerick McKinnon, or in the games where Jerick McKinnon has been out. McKinnon's on IR. So, should be awesome usage for Pacheco this week. Beyond that, I think
the one thing we wanted from Pacheco was like more passing down involvement and more red zone work. And so you take out McKinnon, who like that's all he was doing, really adds up to his touchdown upside. And he's averaging 5 targets per game over his last 4. I think he's exceeded like 22 DK in 3 of his last 4. So that really has a massive impact on a team that I think now more than ever wants to win with their defense, and especially so in this game, given the weather concerns. And also like Pacheco's playing style, I think is perfectly suits, a cold weather bruising game like this.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, Pacheco's a great play. I think Achane is interesting that he's not getting the ownership. He's a guy you worry about Miami not giving him enough touches. I think this is a spot where we shouldn't have to worry about that at all. I think he'll get probably his like highest snap share of the season. Mostert's still banged up.
He's still averaging 7.8 yards per carry on the season. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's the most by any running back with at least 100 carries by a full yard all time. Insane.
Yep. Yeah. It's true.
Dude, that's sick.
It's a yard ahead of Charles' record, right? Wasn't it Charles who?
Oh, it's like some guy from like 1950. I think Charles' record was 6.4, and he's.
Did you tweet this out, Jake?
I did not. This is just from memory. Looking at
all right, I'm going to steal that real quick.
Scott's being recorded as stealing a tweet. Finally caught him.
Me. All right.
I think Achane's a great play, especially as leverage off Pacheco. Pacheco's an awesome play, but he's going to be, owned as so. Achane's a similar price. So he's a guy I think is in terms of like if he were to get like 20 plus touches, this could be, the greatest game we've seen from him this year, and we've seen what he can do. Otherwise, I think, if you were just like who projects as the best running back on the slate, it'd be Pacheco, probably.
Yeah, but if you want to talk about upside relative to cost and ownership, it really might be Devon Achane. Like he has 6 games with double-digit touches, and he has season highs of 54, 30, 27, 26, 25 DraftKings fantasy points. He has this rare ability where I know he was dealing with an injury too for some of this stretch, but this rare ability to where it's like, it just looks like it's impossible to tackle him. And like, if he gets those touches in this game and, teams are slowed down by the weather, they're just tired of chasing these speed demons. It could be a slate wrecking performance on this short slate where you needed to have him.
Well, yeah. And I mean, part of the argument here is that, Tua was born in Hawaii, played college football in Alabama, and now plays pro football in Florida, and he's about to play in one of the coldest games of all time. I mean, Miami's just going to lean on their running backs here. I really don't see him putting the ball into his hands. The prop market agrees. His passing props at like 231, which is absurdly low. Tyreek's receiving prop is only 8 yards ahead of Amari Cooper. Tyreek costs almost $2K more. I think this Miami offense runs through the running backs here, and like Johnny noted, that should be Achane with Mostert still beat up.
Yeah. So what is the status of Mostert? How banged up is he? What do you think we should expect in terms of a split?
Well, he had knee surgery, like in-season knee. He had whatever you want to call it. He had a minor procedure to have his knee drained during the season. He played that 1 week. He was horrible, and then they held him out the week after that. So he's not like whether he plays or not. He's not. I mean, he's not healthy. Just he's not going to be the rest of the year. Well,
so I guess we really love, Achane as one of the top fantasy points plays of the week. I love this because I've been chasing this for so long, and that one game where he left
playing when he was like the slam dunk play of the week.
All right, so we got that. What about Tyreek Hill? I mean, we just talked about the best season ever in terms of yards per carry. Well, what about the best wide receiver season ever in terms of yards per route run? But it's another player who's banged up. What do we think about Tyreek, Jake?
I mean, the matchup's brutal. Kansas City's let up just 12.7 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receiver ones this year. That's second toughest. Weather's going to be terrible. Vegas isn't anticipating many deep throws for Tua, but it's also Tyreek Hill. Anytime you can get Tyreek Hill under 5%, I think you can pretty easily justify that in tournaments. I mean, we know what this guy can do.
So I wonder if we should be expecting a L'Jarius Sneed shadow. Sneed has been excellent. Like you said, Chiefs just shutting down wide receiver ones this year, including some really spectacular ones. But then again, you can make the argument, oh, Tyreek on man coverage. He can beat any, him in man coverage against anyone is like a massive benefit for a guy who's typically, bracketed or double teamed. But then again, could you make an argument for Jalen Waddle? Because digging into the numbers, the Chiefs have been super vulnerable to wide receiver twos this year. Or are we too worried about his health?
Yeah, the Waddle question, I don't know. I think.
By the way, insert Ricky D tweet here about Jalen Waddle being good leverage. I guess it doesn't even make sense when Tyreek's not even highly owned.
Yeah. I mean, he's not leverage off of like Tyreek in this game. I mean, he would be leverage off of the other guys in that price range, which is Nico, Amari, Puka, Rashee Rice is probably your leverage for Waddle. But yeah, I don't think we have any like firm confirmation on whether Waddle even plays. I know he's been practicing. So I think he plays. And the question is like, is he healthier? And he should be back. At least everyone's saying he's back or whatever, but he's still listed questionable, right? So I think he would be possibly healthier than Tyreek at this point.
Yeah, it's tough for me. I really don't see myself getting there on the 6-game slate, but I mean, for the 2-gamer, I think you could justify Waddle. Not a guy I really have a strong take on.
Yeah. I mean, that weather...
I'd rather play Tyreek if they're both going to be sub 5%. I mean, just give me Tyreek.
Yeah. And that weather is really concerning for the pass attack there. I guess moving back over to the Kansas City Chiefs side, I said I really liked Rashee Rice, just like clearly now the alpha number one, well ahead of Travis Kelce, who looks super dusty at this stage of his career. Although we do know Kansas City likes to play it safe with some of their veterans heading into the playoffs, but you're not seeing that any sort of demotion in terms of route share. Whereas Rashee Rice went from a 40% route share guy to an 85% route share and maintained his top 10 levels of yards per route run efficiency. I think he's, an awesome play, very, very safe. And then talking about upside, what do we think about this matchup for him? Xavier Howard suffered that injury, is currently questionable. Would Jalen Ramsey shadow? Does that even matter? And remember, with Rashee Rice, he does get those manufactured touches. So again, like really high floor for him. And then it's a question of upside. I guess we can nitpick over the matchup. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I don't think Ramsey shadows. I mean, overall, it's a decent matchup for Rice. I think my biggest concern here is probably just pace and weather. I mean, the floor is really strong given the amount of designed looks that he's been getting. But yeah, it's hard for me to like consider Rashee Rice a great play. It's more of like a good play with a pretty great floor.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I do think like if you're playing the Saturday only slate, I think in tournaments saying, okay, Houston Cleveland game sucks and this game shoots out is probably the angle to go to for tournaments. So guys like Rashee Rice and Tyreek, I would ramp up for Saturday only. But in terms of the full slate, I probably wouldn't really be too stoked about them.
Yeah, full slate, logically, this should be Pacheco, should be A-Chain, and like ridiculously bad weather. Throwback to that Buffalo Bills New England game where Patriots chucked it, I think, only 2 or 3 times.
Yeah,
with
and we
negative
just got a
rain.
question about someone had asked data for really, really cold weather games for under the total. Like if you had bet the total when it opened versus now, you would want to, but it's already come down. So I think the projected total is kind of baked into the weather at this point.
Well, for that Patriots Bills game I was talking about, I did
Yeah,
slide into Discord and tell everyone to hammer passing unders and rushing overs as a parlay. Could that still be in play here?
probably not at this point.
All right.
I mean, this stuff flies because there's only 6
Yeah.
games. I know the Buffalo total moved like 5 points in 30 minutes or 40 minutes today when they changed the sort of weather projection. So,
I mean, Travis Kelce, just full fade, right? Or is there any?
Well, I mean he is.
He's the
fat,
cheapest he's
controlled.
been since when, Jake?
Week 2 of 2018. And
I
the
love that
Dolphins
you know
are a
that.
top 8 schedule adjusted matchup for opposing tight ends, but those are probably the only nice things you could say about Travis Kelce right now.
Yeah, week 2, 2018 is probably the last time you needed him in a DFS lineup.
Damn, cold. Speaking of cold, speaking of another bad weather game, could we move on from this? Any other notes, Jake?
I don't have anything. Yeah, looks.
Yeah, I mean Chiefs defense is a really good play.
Okay. Pittsburgh at Buffalo. Chance of snow showers, 22 mile per hour sustained winds, hearing gusts of upwards of 60 miles per hour, which like I'm pretty sure that's like hurricanes, tornadoes, cows flying.
Yeah.
That's a
Supposedly the
little
gusts
crazy.
will be 45 by Sunday.
40. That's still insane. Yeah. I did a breakdown of this and it was something like you really worry about wind speeds where it's like 15 miles per hour and above, and then like 25 and above. It's just like this massive detriment to your quarterback and receivers. It benefits the running backs, but I can't even imagine 40 plus. It's just like, yeah. And so I tried to make an argument for Najee Harris. I went back and forth with Jake on that. Pittsburgh, 11.75 implied point total. Did not know that. That is, wow. Yikes. And Buffalo Bills are 9.5 point favorites. I actually think that's way too high. I kind of like Pittsburgh side there. But this is also far and away the lowest over under game of the slate, nearly 10 points behind Tampa, Philadelphia, which has like 0 healthy quarterbacks and multiple injured wide receivers. So this is crazy. Yeah, this looks like another game where you can kind of just write off the passing game options and really just want to target the running game. The issue with that on Buffalo's side is, as Johnny put it, Josh Allen learned the tush push, and now he's just vulturing all the rushing touchdowns, severely capping James Cook's upside. But we do know from that week against Dallas where he won me 25K, he does have some upside. And then on Pittsburgh's side, there is a committee there, and historically, or looking back at this committee, Jaylen Warren benefits from negative game script. You know, they're 9.5 point dogs. But we are seeing Najee sort of deployed as a bell cow. I think he's been over 22.5 DK in back-to-back games. He hit a season high in snap share last week. And so I just see this as like a throwback, old school, bad weather, just run the ball sort of game, which is like kind of exactly what Pittsburgh wants to do with their QB3 now, the starter.
Future QB1.
Hey, he's balling out. He's clearly their best one. So, yeah, Jake, why don't you tell me how you're kind of viewing this game and who stands out most to you?
Yeah, I think earlier in the week I was definitely on team Jaylen Warren over Najee. I mean, as Scott noted, we generally want to target Warren in these negative game script spots, but the more I think about it and the worse the weather's gotten, and, with a little bit of Scott's push, I think Najee's, a pretty solid play. Not a guy I think I'll get to on the 6-game slate, but, probably still viable, especially paired with the Pittsburgh defense there. Especially on the Sunday 3-game slate, though. I think Najee's going to be a pretty decent play here. I mean, they're obviously going to want to keep the ball out of Mason Rudolph's hands. There's a ton of snow, and, Buffalo runs a lot of too high as well, which should negate the upside of George Pickens and Deontay Johnson, although, they have been running a little bit more single high in the final few weeks of the season. But Najee Harris's usage has been really strong, 16.9 expected fantasy points per game in his games with Mason Rudolph. That would rank 5th best among all running backs over the whole season. I know that, they won those games and that Najee had positive game script, but I think it just speaks to the fact that they want to keep the ball out of Rudolph's hands, especially here. A snow game just kind of screams Najee Harris.
Yeah, I'd agree. And just every slate, like I've been playing showdown slates when Pittsburgh is on them just to play Najee Harris, because like Jaylen Warren, like not that I like Najee Harris, but Jaylen Warren is always just like twice as owned.
Yeah.
2.5 times as owned. And, they generally, until the last 2 weeks, were like 50-50. And even now it's like, 65-35. And I think Warren will still be higher owned just because people want him to be like the starter. So they just like keep playing him, even though Najee gets the goal line carries and, gets the ugly work. So, he obviously has a ceiling for 30 carries in a game like this. And so I think he's a great play. I mean, you're not going to expect efficiency. You're just expecting volume. And I think you should also just like in your head when you're building around this game, just like think about this game with as much variance in mind as possible. It's going to be ugly. So
that's why that 9.5 point spread is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah. It should be lower and as the total comes down, but not surprised. People, I mean, Steelers like really shouldn't be in the playoffs, so that's probably why the line is sitting.
I like Steelers money line too. It's just like the team that always overachieves versus the team that always underachieves.
Yeah, I mean, this is the weather is really gives them a huge advantage, and like all the Steelers beat writers like whining on Twitter that like this game should be moved. Like they have to be like the biggest idiots. I mean, the beat writers for Pittsburgh are just miserable. Yeah, this gives them like a huge advantage where we add this variance. So, in terms of playing like Steelers defense, paired with Najee Harris, I think is a great play. And then, I do think Josh Allen is in play. Like Scott said, tush push, and I do think he'll run a ton like he has in the playoffs historically. So, expect him to run a few more times, especially in the red zone. So, you could see a 100-yard rushing game from Allen, where he has like 3 touchdowns and only throws for, 100 yards or something, which could, make him QB1 for sure.
I like both defenses in this game.
I think just to Johnny's point about Josh Allen, I think in these snow games, teams will want to limit the amount of times the ball changes hands, which means QB runs are just going to be a lot more viable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. We're definitely going to see Allen try and jump over someone in the snow. He's definitely going to fumble it, but it's going to be awesome.
What about, I mean, there are viable pass catchers in this game. I think who stands out most to me are the cheapest ones. Khalil Shakir, no Gabe Davis, in a great slot matchup. And then I'm curious about what Gabe Davis's absence might mean for Dalton Kincaid. But he really hasn't done anything since Dawson Knox returned. Jake, what do you think about those two players?
Yeah, I think Shakir is a really strong value. Obviously not close to like Demarcus Robinson level, but probably the second best guy after him. So pretty strong value, 82% route share, 16% target share, 10.2 expected fantasy points last week. When Gabe Davis went down, Kincaid is tough. I mean, I can't find many reasons to like him this week, but he's going to play a lot. They're going to run a lot of 12, especially in the snow. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if both Knox and Kincaid had a route share over 70%. Yeah, I mean, he's fine, I guess. Tight end to me is easily the toughest position on the slate. I mean, there's 4 guys who I think are pretty solid plays in Njoku, Ferguson, Schultz, and Goddard. And then after that, it's tricky. So curious what Proctor thinks on Kincaid here.
This is like if there was no weather, this would be like the spot to get on Kincaid in the playoffs. You just like hope that they ramp him up, but it's like it feels like a Knox game with the way that the weather is, which is so annoying because he's like so brutal to play as a pass catcher. I mean, if you're playing the 6-game slate, I'm probably just like excluding Buffalo pass catchers. But on the 3-game slate on Sunday, you're going to have to take some shots on these guys. I do think Kincaid is he's interesting, but there's no way I'm playing him over Ferguson, Schultz, or Goddard. So I probably will just like not end up with much of him at all. I will say Shakir is definitely interesting, even in the snow. I mean, 3,400, he really doesn't have to do much of anything. Hard not to like him, especially the sort of the role he has played at times where he has gotten these, like when we've seen him get ramped up, we've seen him be used in in the screen game and that kind of stuff. So hopefully we could see some more of that. I did see Debro's comment pop up that Josh Allen's rush attempt line was 9. I feel like that's pretty low. He had 11 and 15 the last 2 weeks when they needed to win. So I'd expect 9 probably is like a floor in a snow game for like in my head.
Oh wow, yeah, I'm looking at 8.5. A little bit juiced to the over on some offshores. I'm gonna hit that. That's a good call. Yeah.
Scott Kincaid. I hate that like his role is so frustrating.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just gonna jam in Njoku. I don't think there's gonna be a second tight end for me in the flex. Maybe Schultz on the right stacked lineups.
Yeah. Definitely a slate where you can play 2 tight ends though.
I think if you're going to pick a Pittsburgh wide receiver, it's going to be Pickens just because he's been so much more productive with Mason Rudolph under center. But I just really don't see much happening for them through the air. Don't you think you're going to play Stephon Diggs in a bad shadow matchup when he's just been a ghost for a month and a half? Yeah. Anything else?
Nope. Just have to add that it's so hilarious that MAGA Rudolph does not throw to Pat Fryerman with his only white wide receiver. Continues to be.
Why is that? Why is that, Johnny?
Reverse racism, man. The hit to the head. Got this guy back straight.
That's awesome. All right. Moving on to the next game. Sunday, 3:30. Green Bay, Dallas at Dallas. Weather is
it's in a dome,
cold.
bro.
What's that?
It's in a dome, dude.
Oh, is it? Oh, damn, you're right. You're right. Okay, so weather's gonna be nicely, I don't know, 77 degrees, whatever dome temperatures are. Yeah, and the spread is 7 points in Dallas's favor, second highest over under.
I've seen 6.5 in some spots too.
Okay. And I guess let's start off with Dallas side, which I think is the easiest. Dak Prescott gets a nuts coverage shell matchup. He's been on fire at home. CeeDee Lamb has been the most valuable player in fantasy for, 12 weeks now. He's also like insane at home. Great coverage shell matchup. Green Bay, especially vulnerable in the middle of the field, and 2 slot wide receivers. Personally, think he's a must play. I like Dak. I don't know how highly owned Dak is going to be, but I like him as a pay up option. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, he's a fantastic play. Jared Goff is projecting slightly better on DK, but I think Dak is the clear cash game quarterback over on FanDuel. I mean, everything Scott said alongside, great schematic matchup. And I mean, I think one of the most absurd stats is that 5 different quarterbacks have had their best PFF passing grade of the season against Green Bay. I mean, this past defense has been really, really bad. Dak gets a serious boost at home. Yeah, he's a fantastic play. And especially on this slate where you look at these quarterbacks that are priced over $7K and no one really gets you that excited outside of Dak Prescott.
Yep. Yeah. And then Jair Alexander got hurt this week in practice on top of it. So even if he plays, I imagine he'll be somewhat limited, and he definitely has CTE. I mean, that guy has lost his absolute mind. So who knows what's going on with their secondary? I mean, Green Bay is their whole defense is just completely falling apart. So I would expect Dallas to throw, which has been really successful for them at home. I do think we could see, and it like breaks my heart to say it, I think we could see Pollard get like his highest usage of the season probably now that it's the playoffs. Not that I ever want to play this guy, but it's just something to consider in terms of like how they'll use him for the playoffs without they won't use these other guys quite as much. But that said, passing game is where I would want to be. I think Dak smashes. Surprised that Green Bay has gotten as much love in the betting markets. I think Dallas is just, I guess Green Bay has been really fun. And they make this game really easy to stack. All these Green Bay guys are cheap. We have Watson still questionable. Jaden Reed still only 5,700, like operating as the wide receiver one. You have, let's see, Bo Melton has been, has popped up. He's 3,300. Dontavian Wicks is 4,800. So, even if you're not playing Dak and them doing the minis with CD and these Green Bay guys and rotating that is just, it's just too good.
Yeah, I think my favorite mini here would probably be CD and Aaron Jones. Jones' usage last week was just fantastic. And it doesn't look like AJ Dillon will play in this game. If he does, he'll probably be limited. Ideally, obviously,
doubtful. So
okay, yeah, it doesn't look like he's going to play. In that case, yeah, wheels up on Aaron Jones, who's a fantastic play. Out of all the running backs on this slate, no running back has a higher correlation with their respective defense than Aaron Jones. But Green Bay defense has been getting absolutely shredded. So not my favorite running back defense combo, but did think that was worth noting.
Yeah, and I will say if you're playing Dak, I think you need to be doubling him. That's how, or triple. I think you could triple him too. Aaron Jones has been awesome for like 3.5 weeks now. He just hasn't scored touchdowns. So I think that's really like what's keeping his ownership down a little bit. Like if he had had 2 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks, he would be like what? 10, 15%, 20% more owned, I think. He's probably my favorite running back on the play or on the slate, just in terms of like where his ownership is, where he projects. I mean, he projects basically as good as, Singletary in terms of point per dollar, and, he'll be 10, 12, 15% lower owned.
How do you see running back ownership shaking out this week, Proctor? Because I mean, Pollard is up there in all the projections I've been looking at. He's top 3, and I just don't see how you're getting to Pollard as a top 3 play on the slate. I mean, he's fine at 6,100, but I'm very confused by this.
I think it's so like if you look at like total running back share of touches, you look at like the total points projected in the game. Optimizers just get him all the time. So people just play him in terms of like, the environment that he's in is so good. He just hasn't gotten there. And every week I say, like, there's no way this guy's going to be 15% owned, on main slates. And then he comes in like 12.5. So I don't know how many more times we can say, like, no one's going to play Pollard. And then people still play Pollard. But yeah, I think he'll be owned. I mean, I think he'll be probably around Aaron Jones in terms of ownership. He's a 7-point favorite, 28-point team total. It's like what dreams are made of for a running back. It's Tony Pollard, and he sucks, but people are going to play him.
Not me.
Yeah, I don't think I will be either. I mean, definitely prefer Aaron Jones straight up. Pollard has 4 times as many games of single-digit DraftKings points than he does of 20-plus DraftKings points.
Yeah.
Also, his usage recently has not been good. 11.8 expected fantasy points per game over his last 4. Rico Dowdle's handling 30% of snaps inside the 10. I get the argument that he will probably play more because of the playoffs. But I mean, still not great usage.
Yeah. I mean, you tip the slider, if you're projecting. I mean, I don't really want to play him, but I do think he'll play more. I still probably won't play him. I prefer Jones. I prefer Pacheco. Prefer probably Gibbs. But yeah, I mean, if there's a week where he's going to get 20 touches, that's probably it. it's just not fun to click the button.
Yeah, I think Aaron Jones, great play. Like you guys said, no AJ Dillon. I just think that's massive for him. He's been great, insanely efficient, rushing volume there. He's just getting cucked to the goal line. That's no longer a concern. Did you say who your favorite receiver was, Johnny, on Green Bay's side?
If Watson plays, it's going to be Watson. I'll just keep saying this, and the guy will just keep not playing though. Because I do think the deep passes that Watson gets when he is there are just so valuable. But if he's out, I probably like Dontavian Wicks the most. I think he's the healthiest of the group, and he showed a lot more upside than the other twos. Reed's great, but he's banged up and just a little more expensive. But if you have faith in his health and Watson's out, I think Jaden Reed's a great play too.
Would you consider Bo Melton a viable salary saving option if Watson sits?
Yeah, and I would play him over Dobbs. It just seems like he's sort of passing him.
Anything else from this game, guys?
Oh, I think Kraft will play over
Musgrave.
I'm not 100% confident in that, but if I had to pick one, I would pick him.
Yeah, Musgrave only 17% route share last week, but he did say he expects to play more this week. I mean, I'm pretty worried about a gross split here, but I mean, if you're debating between Tucker Kraft and Cade Otton, just play Kraft.
Yeah, Cade Otton, never playing that guy again in my life.
Yeah. Brandon Cooks has a pretty solid matchup. Not as great as CeeDee Lamb, but I do think he's very viable in Dak double stacks. It looks like the field's going to drift a lot more towards Jake Ferguson as opposed to Cooks. I mean, Cooks' production at home is like 3 times better than his production on the road.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like he started out the year sort of like shaky, but now he's like the clear wide receiver too. So, and I think he gets lost in the shuffle this week a bit because the 4,900 price, like people are going to play all of those mid 3, low 4 guys before they play him. And then, they're going to go up probably to, the Jaden Reeds of the world. So he's just going to kind of not get played. That's my thoughts on him, at least outside of Dak stacks.
Yeah. So he could be a little interesting as a one-off play. If you want to get a little weird in that price range, I'm with you.
All right, moving on to the next game. This is a dome game. Don't have to worry about weather. This is the Rams are 3-point road underdogs to Detroit. This is the highest over-under game of the slate. Jake, what stands out most to you from this game?
I mean, Kyren Williams at 7,300 is just ridiculous. He's been 27% more productive and has earned 24% better usage than the next closest slate eligible running back. I mean, I could rattle off stats all day, but I mean, Proctor, I can tell you agree with me here. Kyren Williams is one of the best running back plays of the slate.
Yeah, and DraftKings always does this on these playoff slates where there's like a couple players that they'll just drop their price tag. Like CeeDee Lamb should probably be like 9,700. Kyren should be 83, 8,400 because they just want to let you fit these superstars, but people still aren't playing him. I guess the matchup, being the road dog against the, the Lions, who are, a top 5 run defense at times. But in terms of the usage, he's so hard to get away from. And I think he should be in tournaments if his ownership is going to stay like this, as like RB6 on the slate overall, something like that, he would probably be a pretty big priority for me.
Yeah, really the only knock on Kyren is that the matchup's really tough. I believe Detroit's the either second toughest or single toughest schedule adjusted matchup for opposing running backs this season, which obviously isn't great. But when the game's projected to be a track meet and Kyren Williams is going to see every backfield touch in the red zone, I mean, what are we worried about?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and it's, they are road dogs, but they still have a 24-point team total, which is what, third best on the slate, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's a great play.
Sticking with the Ram side, I think Stafford is interesting. He's cleared 22.5 DraftKings points in 4 of his last 6. Detroit is the 8th softest schedule adjusted matchup for quarterbacks since week 12. He's relatively easy to stack with, D-Rob, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nakua. Should be playing from behind. I don't consider him nearly as strong as a GPP play on the 6-game slate as CJ Stroud, but I think he's clearly in the next tier among quarterbacks. And then it's really just debating Puka versus Cooper Kupp, because we know Demarcus Robinson is among the best values of the slate. I mean, easily the best wide receiver value of the slate, probably the best value on the slate overall. Over 13.5 DraftKings points in his last 5 games. They rested him in week 18. They clearly think very highly of him. Almost as 8 end zone targets over his last 5. Cooper Kupp and Nakua have combined for 9. He has probably the best touchdown equity of any sub 4K receiver we've seen this season.
Yeah. And will be owned. I mean,
yes. Oh yeah.
Definitely going to be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate. Just the only value that stands out. And Scott, that's why I like, Elijah Moore, Jameson Williams, Shakir, just finding ways to get away from Robinson in tournaments. I mean, obviously, if you're playing cash games, you should be locking him in because there's not a ton of value on the slate. But man, he's gonna be high owned. Just reminds me of that year that Anquan Bolden was like 60% owned in the playoff slate because there was no other value and immediately scored a touchdown. So I'm sure that's what Robinson will do as well. I do think playing Stafford, you can play Kyren in your Stafford stacks. I would imagine in this matchup, we see Kyren get pretty involved in the passing game. And I know his passing involvement has sort of fluctuated, but I think this is a matchup where we can see it ramp up. And I would expect him to see like 100% of the snaps here. I wouldn't expect to see any of those other guys at all. And let's see. And then I know we talked about Goff a little bit. I think Goff is also phenomenal play. Seems like Amon-Ra probably gets he'll be owned, but I think on the bigger slates, on the 5 and the 6 game slates, I think he gets lost in the shuffle with Amari and Nico. So I do think Amon-Ra is someone that I really like to get to. And Jameson. Goff is just sort of like a cheaper double stack than some of these other guys. So that's something I like to do on the 6 game slate, where I think Goff and Amon-Ra probably come in lower owned. On the 3 game slate, though, I think Goff and Amon-Ra will be super popular.
Yeah, I'm with you. Goff is a very, very strong projected value, and he's relatively easy to stack. I mean, the only thing that's tricky is we're not sure if Laporta is going to play. I mean, I think he probably does, and is just super limited would be my lean.
Yep.
In which case, still worth a decent boost to Amon-Ra, Jahmyr Gibbs. And yeah, Jameson Williams is looking like a really, really nice pivot in tournaments off of Demarcus Robinson. Playing time and volume has been ramping up a little bit, and the Rams over the last 5 weeks have been by far, not remotely close, the single softest schedule adjusted matchup for opposing outside wide receivers, also giving up a ton deep. I believe 100 more receiving yards on throws of 10 plus yards than the next closest team. That just screams Jameson Williams game, but he's still going to be fairly owned. On the 6 game slate, I'm seeing around 15-20%. You think that's where I'll come in, Proctor?
Yeah, but he's going to be half as owned as Demarcus Robinson, I would imagine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
D-Rob is going to cross 50% in like single entry stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's probably he'll be the highest owned player on the slate for sure.
Who will?
Demarcus Robinson.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
For sure.
Yeah.
The counter argument on Jameson Williams is like, I don't know that he's ever hit double-digit fantasy points ever in his career. He had a career high 69 yards in his last game, which all came on 1 catch. But
yeah, but I mean, you're looking for like who was a 3,500 player who can outscore Demarcus Robinson is really all you're looking for.
I think I'd rather play D-Rob. Everything just kind of lines up for him.
I think
you can't do that
when you're Scott. No, I mean, he's just going to be like 60% owned at some point.
Yeah, I think I'd rather just eat that.
It's tough on a slate like this.
Yeah. Do we hit on Puka versus Kupp?
To me, it's pretty clearly Puka, but ownership's going to reflect that. And I mean, I think like there's a decent chance this extra week of rest could really help a guy like Cooper Kupp, right? Right, Johnny?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I mean it'll be, all, they're not going to limit these guys at all. I would imagine DeMarcus, Puka, and Cooper are all like 100% of the snaps. So I doubt, he'll be coming off the field at all. So, matchup's great. And it's like they're both going to get used. Puka's just been better.
Yeah. And I think, you look at like yards per hour run or whatever, and, you obviously want to just click Puka. But like I noted, I think the extra week of rest could, put a little bit of extra juice back into Kupp's legs. So if you need to save on ownership, I mean, Kupp is definitely the way to do it if you're debating between the two. But Nacua would be the preference for median in that regard. Lions running backs, I don't think we touched on. Jahmyr Gibbs is a very strong play, especially if Laporta sits. He's like a great play. Not quite on the cash line, but like next year down is what I would consider him. Proctor, you have any thoughts on the Lions backfield here?
Yeah, I like Gibbs. I think this is, again, a spot where we see Gibbs get more usage. I mean, they do like Montgomery, though, so I wouldn't expect much more usage, but I think probably a little bit more usage than regular season. So I'd lean that way. Although, Lions defense, David Montgomery always in play as the home favorite.
He's probably going to go super low owned.
Montgomery, yeah, no one's going to play him. He could definitely be that 2-touchdown annoying running back on this, that you get on a playoff slate.
Would you call he'd be viable for the 6-gamer?
Yeah.
Probably only with Lions defense for me.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at too. I think on the 3-game slate, he's definitely intriguing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just massive upside there though. In that backfield, you look at backfields that have combined for 30 plus points or games with 30 plus or 25 plus 20. It's interesting. Yeah. Detroit and Miami combined for the most and the second most, ahead of the Rams, ahead of the 49ers, which might surprise some people. Gibbs has finished top 4 at the position in fantasy points, and it's something like 6 of his last 11 games, or 5 of his last 11. So there is upside there. But just straight up good plays, like I wouldn't put them above Pacheco or Aaron Jones. Yeah, and the Laporta thing is tricky. Like, how healthy do we think he's going to be? Do we think he's just going to be a full-on decoy? Because you remove him from the picture, Amon-Ra St. Brown looks like an amazing play. Gibbs, you can really make an argument for a higher target ceiling, like Alvin Kamara-esque usage.
We also like that James Mitchell is out, right? So if Laporta doesn't play, Brock Wright would really be like their only tight end, which is kind of interesting for.
Well, that was the case last year, right? Without TJ Hawkinson, and he didn't do anything.
No, they had both of them. It was like really annoying because like there was like the games where Mitchell would have like 2 targets and like always score a touchdown or whatever. But he was, because Mitchell was the guy that like Evan Silva like was in love with, but like the Lions just like wouldn't play him. But he's out. I do think Laporta probably plays though. He has a huge knee brace on though, so he's definitely going to be somewhat limited. I will say something I forgot to mention. I think one thing in tournament, like if you were playing like the Millie Maker, Stafford with Puka and Kupp and no DeMarcus Robinson is like just as big a leverage as you can get on the slate.
Yeah.
But otherwise, in terms of Lions guys, I think it's Amon-Ra and Jameson as the passing game options. I wouldn't play Laporta even if he plays.
Yeah, it's just brutal with this being the last game. You're in some real trouble if you roster Laporta and he sits. I mean, obviously in the 3-game slate, you're swapping to Higbee. On the 6-game slate, you're getting to Goddard and leaving 1,200 on the table. I mean, that doesn't feel good. So, I'd be much more comfortable just having 0 Laporta exposure and, assuming he's going to be limited.
Yep.
Anything else from this game?
Don't think so.
Okay. Next up, Eagles at Buccaneers, 66 degrees, light rain showers, minimal gusts of wind. Second lowest over under the slate. Eagles 3-point road favorites. Yeah, I mean, what immediately jumps out to me is just like the decline of the Philadelphia Eagles. One of the worst defenses all year. Matt Patricia came in, didn't get much better. The offense has really imploded. Now Jalen Hurts is dealing with this finger injury. AJ Brown is banged up. Devonta Smith is banged up. And since Matt Patricia took over, it's been the Eagles morphed into like one of the top run funnel defenses in football. But still, if you look across the full season, like Eagles are Washington Commanders levels of bad through the air and against opposing wide receivers. So I initially like wanted to love Baker Mayfield doubles as sort of this contrarian play against Joe Flacco doubles. The issue with that is, well, Baker Mayfield's also banged up. And so, Johnny, since you are our resident injury expert for the show, Dr. John Proctor, Esquire, what do you think is going on with all these various players?
Baker thing's tough. He was like legit hurt last week. Could not throw the ball downfield. Just like wincing in pain the whole game, which is like sucks so much because this would be the perfect spot to get on Baker. If you get any read that he's healthy, I mean, I feel like he's not. He's dealing with it's the ribs and the ankle now. Let's see. So they said it looks like they expect him to be a full participant tomorrow, but I don't think that really tells us much of anything. He's going to play. He'll be off the injury report, but man, if you can stomach it, he's in the perfect spot in the playoffs, but you got to wait till Monday night to find out if the guy's even going to be able to like throw downfield. Probably be a hard sell for me to play, but I do think if he's healthy, Mike Evans would be like that guy who can just nuke the slate against the Eagles, and no one is going to play him. Looking like 5-6% maybe on like the full main slate, which is so low considering a guy who has been awesome for most of the season. So he's a guy I have interest in, but probably can't play much of.
Yeah, I'm with Proctor. Really tough to get a read on the whole Baker situation. That said, if you were gonna bet on a game to play a guy where somebody's injured, it would be the Monday night game. You could get pretty good leverage here. I am still seeing Baker project for some ownership, which is a little concerning. I was hoping he would be like totally unowned like Stroud, but looks like he'll be right around like the Jordan Love levels of ownership.
I feel like it could come down.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I have a hard time seeing him be 8% if everyone thinks he's hurt. But yeah, with Proctor, I think Evans would probably be the way to take advantage of that if Baker does end up being healthy. Beyond that, I mean, Rachaad White has a very, very strong correlation with Baker. So, if this offense moves the ball, I think, a Baker, Rachaad White, Mike Evans stack is viable. But it's just so tough with this being like a black hole for injury info right now.
Yeah, I still like the upside there. Obviously there's that risk, but no one's going to play it. You give yourself the out by this being the last game of the slate. And just like the matchup is like almost foolproof. I also really liked Chris Godwin. Since his wife complained on Instagram about his usage, 11 targets, 12 targets, 10 targets, 5 targets, 7 targets. And so he went nuclear against Green Bay, 81 yards and a touchdown against the Saints. Those are top 10 slot matchups. The other matchups where he underwhelmed, those were reverse slot funnel matchups, bottom 8. And then this is the second best possible matchup for
Eagles get back. Eagles will have back their best slot.
Avonte Maddox.
Yeah.
No, seriously?
Isn't he
Damn
back? Could have sworn he was back.
Well, I missed it then.
Full participant on Thursday.
Might play safety though.
Oh,
Oh, that's right. Interesting.
the more that I think about this like Baker spot, the more I think it's probably just the ideal pivot if it gets to Sunday morning and you're
I
playing
was
the
just
game
gonna say
slate
that.
and you're totally fucked. It's like, oh yeah, just fire up
Yeah.
Baker and Evans and let it ride.
Yeah, he's definitely the best pivot. Though
Yeah.
I mean, just Bucks pieces are the best pivots.
That's
Yeah.
a good call.
Makes sense.
Okay,
what-
confirmed. Maddox will play safety, and Bradbury.
That doesn't mean
will
he can't
play-
cover.
Bradbury will play
slots,
big
though.
nickel.
I mean, safeties do get a fair amount of slot coverage reps, but yeah, if Bradbury's nickel, I wouldn't consider it a negative.
Right. No, that's a great spot. Well, what about Rashad White? Like, he's really not too much more expensive than Pacheco and Aaron Jones, and he's going to be significantly lower owned. And like we said, this has really morphed into a run funnel since Patricia took over.
Yeah, I mean, I can't find any compelling reasons to play him over Kyron Williams, but I think nobody really will, and that will, lower his ownership a pretty decent bit. I mean, Philadelphia has been much more of a run funnel since Matt Patricia took over. If you think Baker's really hurt, I mean, he averaged 4.3 yards per attempt last week. That was a career low. That could lead to more checkdowns for Rashad White. At the same time, though, I mean, if Baker's really hurt and they can't move the ball, then what are we doing with Rashad White? How is he going to get there? Yeah, Proctor, I'm really curious on your thoughts here because I
Peppering him with screens and handoffs.
Yeah,
maybe.
I probably prefer Evans, like in the same price range, just in terms of sort of nuke slate upside, because I like the running backs, the other running backs, so much more. But as a pivot, I think pivoting to Rashad White off of Kyron Williams for the full slate is something that makes sense for sure. But I don't think I would start there. I think I would just take Kyron, because Kyron's not going to be massively owned to begin with. So it's like if Kyron's going to be 20 or 25%, and Rashad White's going to be 12% on a playoff slate, I'm just going to play Kyron.
Yeah, with you there.
Well,
Kate
so
Ott,
AJ Brown
yourself.
did not practice two days in a row.
I think he plays.
Deactivated his Twitter and removed all mentions of the Eagles on Instagram. He's going through it.
Is there any chance he misses?
I think he plays.
Yeah,
But
I do too.
If he doesn't, what does that massively boost Goddard or Smith or Quez Watkins?
I mean, I think the wide receiver injuries overall are just a big boost for Goddard. These other ancillary guys just suck. I mean, maybe Julio Jones could score a touchdown, but man, I mean, they don't give any of these other wide receivers usage. Like you look at the full season, they're all like 2 XFP a game.
Yeah. And it'd be great. It'd be great for Smith, but he's like, 6,700 is not like a great price. But yeah, obviously if AJ Brown were to be out, you would want to boost Smith like a ton, but I don't think we're going to know till Monday night.
Yeah.
If AJ Brown were fully healthy, he'd be an awesome play. Tampa Bay just allowing the highest first read target share to opposing wide receivers. So would be a great spot for him.
I know. And it'd be a great spot to play. Like it's like to play Jalen doubles too, but you don't even know like who you're doubling him with.
Right.
Yeah. Proctor, I'm seeing Hurts pull some ownership here, like 4th or 5th, depending on where you look. There's no way he comes in that high, right? Like he's going to be very low owned. He just doesn't appear like a good play. He dislocated a finger on his throwing hand last week. I mean,
yeah,
that
maybe
matters.
in single entries where they're just like playing him and not pairing him. But I think in tournaments where you're stacking him, like none of the stacking pieces project well outside of Goddard. So I think he'll naturally fall way down in terms of like what optimizers are building.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I really don't have much love for Hurts on this slate. I'd rather take my chances with the Tampa Bay side.
Yeah, and like you said, this is a great game for late swaps. Maybe that's how I'll play it.
It definitely is.
You could make an argument for DeAndre Swift just based on the idea that these wide receivers are hurt and Jalen Hurts is hurt and that they're going to have to hand it off a bunch. But I mean, if you're playing the 6-game slate, like I just don't see how you end up on him really at all, given these other options.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, things are just ugly for Philly right now.
Yeah.
It makes it tough in general. Yeah. I probably lean Tampa Bay side. But just overall, if I'm playing the 6-game slate, just pieces from this game in general, definitely where I would be looking for my pivots for the most part.
Yeah, late swap is going to be huge on this slate if you're playing the full 6-game slate, and you have plenty of time to decide with all the games staggered. So it's just like XFL.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And on that note, just for anyone who's like new playing playoff slates, late pivots, late swaps are massive for pieces you missed. Every year in the playoffs, there's been like a piece or multiple pieces that have mattered. There was a year where you needed Randall Cobb because Jordy Nelson got hurt. So if you pivoted to Randall Cobb,
Which we did.
We did on our bad teams. He scored 35 fantasy points, was unowned as the wide receiver 3. The year that the Steelers played the Jaguars, no one was playing Steelers or Jaguars because their defense was so good. Big Ben threw for 405 that game. You needed Steelers and Jaguars to take down any tournaments, and they came in like all like sub 10% because it was like projected to be a tough matchup. So these are the spots that you just need to like move. Like you miss on a guy in the first game who's 35% owned, you have to edit those teams to players who are not going to be owned, and hope for the best.
You guys ready to build a lineup?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Alrighty. Who do we want at quarterback this week? I know.
Can we do maybe 2 lineups and one where we don't start with quarterback?
Sure.
Can we start with Nico and Njoku mini?
All right.
Sure.
Kyron.
Let's see. So if we're not playing Amari, you can definitely play DeMarcus. I think.
Yeah.
I would like to, I think, play Lamb
Right.
if we can make that work.
So then our quarterback we probably need to play Stafford or Dak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Or we could
I
play
don't think we
Stroud,
could
I
afford
guess.
Dak.
I guess we could play Stroud.
Yeah.
That's going to make it tight.
I mean, probably going to be tight either way.
I won 25K with a Kyron D-Rob stack, so why not?
All right, let's run it back. Let's see here. I mean, we're probably just going to have to play like Jam Singletary in here.
Yep.
And then
Or Najee,
yeah.
Pittsburgh D.
Yeah, that might be what this has to be. Then you got 3K.
Brock Wright.
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty
Does-
brutal in this range.
Does fit our stack.
That's a killer team, guys. Yeah, I mean you could go down to Packers and play Singletary.
Yeah.
Do you have a lean there, Johnny?
Let's see. Defense. Yeah, I mean, Packers do project point per dollar slightly better than the Steelers, but I feel like that's not taking weather into account. So,
yeah. All right, shall we fire off one more and then
sure.
call it? All right.
Do it.
Who do we want our quarterback to be on this one, Scott?
That could be your call, Jake.
Oh, well, I do love Stroud. I feel like we should mix a Stroud team in here.
I'm down.
Could do Schultz and Nico and then work Njoku into the flex.
Yeah,
or...
I like that.
Okay.
Schultz, Nico, and Njoku. Okay. We could play Hutchinson and DeMarcus Robinson. Play a Stroud triple. Is Noah Brown going to play, Scott?
Yeah, he's going to be on the field, but he's not going to do anything.
So your source says he's playing?
No, I need to talk to my source. But last we
definitely
talked,
out.
was he just sucks. He's just like so hurt.
Let's
That
see. I think we probably can't play CD. Do we just play Amari too? Just like eat the Mega Chalk?
why not? Just
Well,
hope this game goes
let's see what
bananas.
we have left if we go with like Jones and Pacheco here. Yeah, probably need to.
No, you can
No,
do it.
actually, yeah, we can go. We probably
Yeah,
we
can't fit
can't play
CD.
Amari.
That's okay.
Play
Just
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 works on that team.
and it'd be Chiefs D.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I'd say that's actually a pretty good. It's a pretty good Stroud like single entry team.
you want to wrap it up, or you want to do one last Goff lineup?
It's up to you, man. You're the boss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What do you think, Jake? It's your account, your money. Do you want to waste $5 on a? Oh,
Sure.
are you not entering it?
Oh, I'll go back and enter these.
Oh, okay.
But,
All right.
you know, for the sake of the stream, I think it's quicker to clear these. If anyone dupes me, you will be auto unsubbed from the site.
Wow.
I think the best dupe recently though was when Rebar and Hilo talked about a team, and then him and Pete on like the following stream built it, and then 11 people entered it into the tournament that Hilo plays.
They all cashed.
Yeah, but it was
Shout out to them.
a tie for like 7th place.
All right, so if we're going Goff, we're definitely rolling out JMO and Amon Ra, right?
Yeah,
Definitely Amon Ra. Puka, D-Rob, Kyron.
I mean,
We're gonna need to save some salary. I feel like this is a pretty appropriate spot to play D Rob.
yeah, and I think if you're playing Jameson too, you're getting unique.
Yeah. Kyron is the other rundown.
Kyron, Pacheco, Jones. Could we do that?
Maybe. Yeah.
All right, click cheapest defense and just see what that gives us. Any chance that gets us to? Oh yeah.
Oh, then we can
Njoku?
get Kelsey, the goat.
No.
Then you can go Chiefs.
And Joku with Flacco was better than Kelsey ever was.
Wow.
Oh,
That's not
man.
true. That's not true.
Oh man. Hey, Flacco turned a white guy with bad hips into a star. So
Who is
you can
that?
do it with anyone. Dennis Pitta, bro.
Oh right. Torrey
Come on.
Smith, legend.
Torrey Smith. Yeah. Legend. The legend for being tackled by his hair.
40-year-old Steve Smith.
Yep. The king of revenge games.
All right, are we done here, guys? What do you think about this lineup?
Yeah, I think this one's pretty good too.
Yeah, I
Nice.
think it's strong.
I do think though, if you were playing like larger field stuff, you definitely would not want DeMarcus on like all 3 of your teams.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But for small to midfields, I think these are great. Second 2 probably better.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching and for tuning in. If you like this, please comment, like, subscribe, join Fantasy Points. Right now, we're the cheapest will be all season. You get the rest of this year free, and next year at our cheapest price.
Yep. And Scott and I will continue the Sunday show next year.
Yeah, not this week, right? Yeah,
No,
that wouldn't make
no.
sense. Yeah, okay. All right. Thanks for tuning in. See you guys.